Thank you so much for joining us today, Aaron. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So I'd like to kick off. The very first question is, take me back to, I think, 3 years ago. You were an engineering leader at Seek. You're managing an engineering team. What gave you the inspiration to go out on your own, and why at that moment in time with BuildPass?
Yeah, so BuildPass, I think, so it was kind of started as a bit of a hobby on the side during COVID times in Melbourne. I think we had some of the lockdowns. So I think a lot of projects were created during that time. So for us, look, I kind of, was in my day job with Seek, loving it. I had a really amazing team working all across Seek Asia and Seek Australia. But I've always wanted to start my own thing since I was very, very little. I've had exposure to my parents both running their own businesses, seeing the ups, seeing the downs, and something that I've always wanted to do is kind of build my own company and little business and team. And I think the tech world is very accessible today. So during some of the COVID lockdowns, it was a bit of one of my old colleagues from REA Group came to me with an idea about how we can help with help something with construction. There's this entire gap or void with digital construction. I think we can kind of solve some of that stuff. And so we jumped in, a bit of a off the side project to start with. It was almost seen as a bit of a holiday. I'd work, my day job at Seek, and then afterwards get to muck around with a bit of a tech stack and build something out. And that quickly became a reality. We had, some paying customers, and it kind of just took the leap of faith from there as well, I think. And that was, super exciting to do. Seek was so nice to myself during that time to help support that journey and that growth as well. But it really came from a passion of always wanting to do something, and just giving something a go is better than nothing in that regard. So.
Why specifically construction tech? How did that come up?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. We get asked it a lot of times as well. So both myself and Matt, the other co-founder, have no major background in construction. We've had some experiences in some parallel industries or working through parts of it. So it really came from seeing more of the problems from other people. So my co-founder Matt had a lot of friends in the construction industry, either laborers themselves or through to running their own businesses, and the constant almost, at the pub on a Friday afternoon and hearing some of the complaints about the industry. It was like, well, we can help solve that as well. So early days, there was a lot of learning, a lot of listening, and still to today is something that we were very proud of and push today as well, because we don't have backgrounds in construction, and it's very much about just trying to grasp about taking that approach of what can we do in technology and bring that into construction versus, sometimes bringing some of the biases in from previous experiences as well, so really just kind of, giving any industry a go and kind of hearing some of the problems as well.
That's what really struck me when I was doing my research, is I couldn't see the backgrounds, and I thought, I'm going to ask this question and you're going to tell me you're a construction expert. But that's so cool, because a lot of people would say in the industry, you would have to be a subject matter expert, or you would have to know it inside out. But you're almost kind of using that as a bit of an advantage.
100%. It's something like that has come up. Like you've always, part of that sales pitch to the customers is like, okay, well, what's your background? And we're quite honest and like, look, we don't have that. We either hire people that do have that to bring that in, or we just sit down and listen and understand those problems. And I think, 100% we use it to our advantage. We're bringing no biases to the table. I think construction is an industry that has a lot of individualism. So a lot of their own process per company. So if you had some of the experiences, you might actually bring those biases into how you build that software or how you solve those problems as well. So by not doing that, it almost is a refreshing experience for them. They go, okay, well, look, I can see that you're not coming in with anything that I might not like, or, and so I can build and I can influence that as well with yourself. It's a very collaborative experience with us, and 100% we use it to our advantage. Some of our competitors would, we use it to our disadvantage, but we don't care. We push forward, and again, it's about that listening. It's about co-creating. It's actually one of our values at BuildPass is like co-creating with customers and really just opening up and listening, because they have these problems, and it's our job to not just translate those into solutions. It's the question is to understand a bit more about that and take our experiences building technology and product and doing that in a more refreshing way. So 100%.
I love that. It kind of, I'm assuming, helps with like assumptions and things too, right? Because you do need to test, you do need to ask questions, you do need to get that research because you don't have the day-to-day experience, which will influence you, but also, as you said, bias you too. The thing that struck me from doing a lot of research and looking at the business, it's a young company, right? And I want to go into a few things. The growth is insane. We'll talk about that in a second, but I don't think I've seen a company at your stage so customer focused. Everyone talks about it and you see it in their website and stuff, but I've tracked the feature set, I've tracked the things that you've released, and I've tracked the feedback that the customers have been given. And it's incredible the speed in which someone gives some feedback and then you build something to actually solve that problem. Was that something that you set out to do at the start with Matt, to say this is going to be how we build?
Yeah, 100%. Again, it comes back down to our mentality of being in that product space, and excuse the pun, but it's almost the hammer that we can use to smack every nail. And so we can build product extremely quickly and get stuff out. That is our kind of way to execute. So when we had feedback day one, and this is still working at Seek, I'll be on my lunch break, and can I introduce this feature in an hour to get it out to customers? Yeah, cool, let's go and do that. So from an early stage, we had this concept of like taking customer feedback in and seeing how we can address either a large volume of that quickly in a way that we can learn. So some companies will reach to say no code solutions out there to build that. But for us, it actually will take longer to actually just build that in and actually try that out. And the concept of unshipping code still needs to be very much there. How do you unship stuff that you've done with some of those biases or some of those possibly misdirections as well. But yeah, like we, from a very early age of our company, we wanted to showcase what we were building. I think it's probably the worst thing you can do is you can build in isolation, or you can build without telling everyone. So we brought in concepts of like feature drop Fridays, where every week we would showcase the things that we dropped over the course of the week as well. And I think that customers just love that. They can see that natural progression of the company and the product, and they can see that they're in good hands. I think some of the times, even if shipping's happening in the background, but you're not talking about it, they're kind of like, well, what are you doing? Like, okay, I can put my suggestions in now because you're not doing anything, obviously, as well. And but yeah, it also has a flip side. Like we as a company get so much feedback now, which is fantastic. But sometimes it's now the opposite problem of like, how do you wade through all of that feedback, and how do you sort what's important? And it's definitely the hard thing now, is that like, we are so fortunate that our customers care and love this product, and that will often go out of the way to provide that feedback. And we can be quite reactionary, and we can solve those problems for them. But how do we do it in a way that can scale the company and be more efficient about it as well?
What's your standout example of a piece of feedback or something a customer asked for and it was built into the product and it kind of made an impact?
Yeah, there was little things. So within our product, I have really this one example that someone, we have this concept in construction about creating diaries or reports as well. And I just remember this customer was like, I would love the ability to just switch to the next day and I can see my next day diary. I was like, cool, done. And we shipped it within, I think, an hour or so. We can kind of quickly navigate through that. And they were just like, oh my God, wow. Like, thank you so much for that. And I think that's our benchmark. It's like, how can we have these experiences, these micro experiences of wow, from shipping little things like, a navigation button to go to the next diary, or shipping entirely new feature sets. Like we have customers going, look, I really need this type of feature. I'm on an existing platform. I have a separate bit of software just for this thing. Could you do it? And sometimes it's a no because it's a huge distraction, but sometimes it's like, I can do this. We can wow you. We can, expand that out to all of our customers as well and build that out.
That's amazing because you're doing it as well at the time where they might not expect it, right? So you're not doing it to try and win the customer or part of the pitch to customize you may do that, but when you have a customer, they give you some feedback, you make that change. It's an amazing feeling. Like I've got a couple of examples of products in the last few years and gave some feedback and it's been fixed within a short amount of time. And you actually forgive some of the other things that the product has because you're like, these folks have got this covered. They're listening to us and they're actually building something that's solving the problem rather than just like you say, building in isolation and then trying to then make it fit. You know, we lost Dan for a bit. I think he had a power cut, but he's back in the land of the living.
Perfect timing. The breaker switch, and I'm running downstairs going, what happened? Who the breaker?
All good, mate. So we're just chatting around BuildPass and kind of how they sort of build the product, what kind of made them start and get into the construction tech industry. And the thing I wanted to go to is just to touch on, you've obviously led big teams, right? And you've, as you said, you've came through, I think, REA and then Seek, and then obviously you went and did your own thing. What has surprised you the most about being a co-founder and CTO?
I think what surprised me the most, or rather it's probably the thing that I potentially already knew, is how lonely it is kind of up the top. And I say that in a non-narcissistic way, but I think the problems that you have to deal with, you are in isolation. And I got some of the stuff at REA and Seek when you become those managers as well, and you're dealing with teams of problems. But I think to the scale of building out a team, it's something that really hits you hard and hits you impact. And that comes back down to, you need to trust your co-founder. You need to have this open communication flow as well. And I think I knew this going in, but I think that probably surprised me the most, in how important that particular relationship is, because you are in this together, and it puts, there's going to be stress and strain, and things are amplitude as well as building out a company. And by having that safety net of a founder really, really can help you do better. I think, as a founder, you almost like, I've got this, I have to be this person that's a leader to everyone. But quite often you need to be relying on your co-founders or your leadership team to kind of prop you up sometimes, because you can't be running at 100 kilometers an hour constantly. And I think that really kind of surprised me, is that it's okay to have those days that are that pull you and sap you down, and just to kind of open up and have that chat was really, really important. And that's something that we just had that energy throughout the entire thing. Matt, my co-founder, is extremely good at kind of, it was always being there and being just an ear to myself and providing that feedback. And it's different. Like, I no longer, for the likes of Seek and REA, I had managers that I could constantly rely on and get that feedback. And I think those two organizations are very good with feedback and very good with management and leadership structures. And suddenly you're without all of that. And who do you get your insights from? Who do you have mentors? All that stuff becomes so much more important so quickly, and it changes so quickly as well. Like, leadership from day one as a startup is so different from today, when I'm now with 20 people as well. And so it just rapidly changes, and you constantly need to be adapting to these problems as well.
What type of problems mean that you feel that way? Are there a particular type of issues that happen in the life of a startup where you feel like, man, I really need, well, it would be nice, maybe not need, but it would be nice to have kind of people around me to share the pain or something like that? Any particular issues?
Yeah, I think it really, again, it changes depending on the early days. Like, you're making, an early day CTO or a co-founder is making technical decisions that will impact the company for years to come, the tech debt. And so sometimes you just want to be like, hey, is this the right thing to do? Should I be, calling this, database table this, or calling the service that? And there's those little kind of micro, almost decisions. And then there's the larger stuff. It's the team structure. It's the team makeup. It's how you connect individuals. It's who you hire for, what attributes, and I think that can obviously be a very open conversation. But sometimes, you need, okay, well, I've now hired that person. How am I leading that person? How am I, like, what feedback do I need to get beyond just talking to that individual? Like, is there someone from afar that can observe this, that's a bit kind of detached from that loop of that interaction, and go, hey, look, I think you could do better here at leading this individual. Then it's part of that kind of constantly wanting to do better. But I think that almost changes so rapidly throughout the entire journey, and this is different from a scale up, and this is different from a larger company as well. And it's probably, it comes down to people a lot of the days. It's like, how do I do best with a team that I've not worked with before, or don't have the exact experience with before, and just kind of bouncing ideas off.
I'm interested to know if there's been any technical decisions that you've made that you look back in hindsight and think, oh, maybe that wasn't the best for whatever reason.
Yes and no. I think that's, if I was to lie and say no, but there's almost decisions daily. You go, why did I do that? Like, that's completely okay. I think there's a lot of decisions where like I look back on them now and go, look, given what I know now, I probably still wouldn't have changed anything, but we now need to move on. We now need to do things. So early days, technically, we prioritize speed to market, things that can help build and bootstrap a lot of that code out and get things done quickly. But as a company that you scale and you have really unique requirements to do things in very specific ways, that no longer works. But that's okay. I think that's completely fine. I wouldn't have changed anything in that regards. And so, I think back to my background, I don't have a traditional computer science degree background. I come from a wide range of different skills, and that always has that imposter syndrome. It's like, did I build it with the best knowledge and best decisions? Sometimes the answer is no. Sometimes the answer is yes. But who I talk to through that process is more important. So talking to the people that do have domain knowledge or experience in that way, and kind of just bouncing those ideas off them as well. It's so super important. But yeah, every day there's something technically we uncover of like, oh, that's a bit yuck. But okay, what can we do now? How can we move forward from here?
How did you know that, say, speed to market was more important than, say, engineering, craft, or extra technical beauty? Let's say. How did you know that was the right path to choose?
I think I was super fortunate, and this is no qualms to the likes of REA, but I worked in a corporate incubator at REA called Spacely. Lovely team. Honestly, it was probably the experiences that set me on my career today of just building out a bit of a startup within a larger backed organization that really could help secure that. And so I actually started there as a mid-level developer and worked my way up to leading that team out eventually as well. And what impressed me at the time was just that application could scale to probably millions of users, but it never got that far. There was so much optimization before that. And I love REA and Seek for knowing what is good and knowing what is scalable stuff. But when you actually build a startup, that's not important day one. What's important day one is just to get that feedback or get that customer loop really tight and go back to what we're discussing with Kris. It's like, how can I wow my potential customers so this company can exist tomorrow and make that sale today, knowing that maybe in a year's time that won't scale and maybe that'll max out the DB because it's just really underperformant. And like doing things like that won't scale is so important for a startup. And having that experience in REA where I knew almost the flip side of it really helped teach me that. And I'm sure you never really fit the balance properly, but it's just about doing what you can to see the problem or solve the problem right in front of you, not worrying too much about the future, in my opinion, as a startup.
Yeah, this is like a therapy session for me doing replaying the CTO early days at Homes.
Yes.
By the end of this, Dan's just going to be sitting in the corner back and forward.
Yeah.
I love it. Just to go back to something you said there, Aaron, not the traditional computer science background. Maybe take us back to how it kind of started then and how you got onto that path. Like what sort of where did your journey begin and how did you get to where you are?
Yeah, probably all the way back to when I was probably about 6 years old, actually. So I'm really fortunate that my dad is a computer programmer. He's self-taught. He's a Perl programmer back in the day, and that's something that he quickly shared with me. I have this really fond and amazing experience of asking my dad when I was just a little kid and saying, what can I do with programming? I didn't quite understand what programming was at the stage. And he's like, you can build anything you want. And I was like, well, can I build a tree? He's like, yeah, of course, we can build a tree. And then he sat me down and showed me how to do this. And perhaps I think it was CSS and HTML at the time. Just to go through and build that. And so my journey began very early. I remember building my own websites when I was in primary school and having something hosted. And it was basic stuff. It was nothing too complicated. Never really got into any scripting languages, but I kind of, did some of the IT stuff. Didn't really know what to do with my career. I think the conception of you need to be good at math and programming is something that I had in my brain. I wasn't really good at some of the stuff. I wasn't really studious and, I didn't quite know what I wanted to do, but I love design. I love graphic design. So I was like, okay, cool. Well, I'll go and eventually do a degree in design. And I ended up doing a Bachelor of Arts in digital media and marketing of all things as well. And it was probably the best degree to do, but because it's a different varied experience to some of computer science, but there was a course inside of that degree that was Computer Science 101. I did it. I loved it. I was like, wow, I kind of like, unfortunately picked the wrong degree. So I felt at the time like, this is amazing. And I kind of asked my dean, can I do more subjects? And he was like, maybe if you want to do that, we'll see how we go. I ended up getting like top marks and whatnot. And I think that really set myself onto that, I guess the course of wanting to do technology, but not having a traditional background. I didn't learn about DBs and I didn't learn about all this stuff that I felt like I should have done, but I did programming on the side for so many years. And so coming out of university, I had a Bachelor of Arts degree and not really knowing what I wanted to do with this. I didn't have the computer science degree. And I kind of just lucked into a few early day careers where I would do some basic programming from a design point of view. And I quickly moved into front end development and programming quite quickly. But again, taking the concepts of design and even a bit of marketing that I did as well, and using those to my advantage of not having a traditional background. And it just kept working. And I was like, okay, this is actually quite interesting. I love it. I'm learning on my job. I didn't learn the stuff at my degree. And there's always that imposter syndrome of like, they're asking me questions I feel like I should know. I feel like I should be able to do this, but it turns out no one really knows that. It's all just about Googling sometimes or about just unpacking that problem a bit more. And it kept getting to the point where I was like, I think I can do programming. I really want to jump into that role and then trying to get into front end development or software development roles, and eventually landing my job at REA, which I think got me to the point where that imposter syndrome started to fade. And I was like, okay, now that I'm here, I'm now learning in an environment that is so cohesive to grow and to kind of cater and to learn to that stuff as well. And just felt like that was it. I didn't need to worry about that kind of degree and that background, but it did trip me up a lot early days, I think, trying to get into that. And it was rocky to even get into REA. I got a lot of no's into the interview process and had to kind of get past that, where I couldn't answer some of those technical questions they were asking me as well. So yeah, it was an interesting time.
Do you find that you are influencing that side of the business as well? Like with your background, you're helping with marketing and stuff?
Ironically not. I think in some ways I'm staying away from it more rather. I think it's an interesting thing. I think there's so much to be done at a startup, and so it's just kind of finding what works best for you. As much as I have that background, I feel like, and apologies, I'm going to probably piss off a lot of marketing people here, but like it's a very fluffy thing, marketing. I think it's just about down to putting in energy and effort to understand that. So despite having a degree in marketing, I feel like that's helping me indirectly in my current role, but it doesn't mean that I'm necessarily having to jump into marketing more. I think that marketing is about connecting with customers, future customers, and anyone can do that, in my opinion, but putting in the effort and doing what's right. And we've just recently hired a marketing manager that I don't know how we existed without her before that, because it's just like, there's just so much work to be done. And, wearing half or maybe a quarter of a hat as a founder in that marketing space wasn't doing it justice. And both Matt or I, couldn't have given it the attention that it needed. So.
What do you use in terms of like a framework or a lens to know what to prioritize and what to do? Because if you are a generalist and you're good at lots of different things, how do you know the right thing to do and where to put your time?
This, I think, is probably, if anyone can answer this question for myself too, I think this would be $1 million idea. I think this is something that I constantly battle with. I think I tear myself up inside, and I feel like this is probably an industry-wide problem, especially as someone similar to myself or startup. It's like, what do you spend your time on to be the most effective, both from your mental health point of view, but sustainability and scale. So whether as a CTO and as a co-founder early days, working on problems that are more timely, more reactionary is the most important thing you can do, is just to get that problem solved. But as a company grows, you need to be empowering other leaders. And I constantly find myself slipping back into those individual contributor discussions where I'm solving a particular problem or solving it for someone else, because it rewards me and my satisfaction centers, and it does that, and I'm happy with that. But then I go, look, I shouldn't have probably done that. I should probably be planning this thing or doing things that potentially I don't love or love as much as, say, coding and whatnot. And so it's the constant battle. It's probably the one thing that I don't think I've ever nailed ever, because some days you do need to just jump back into the code and be a bit more selfish, because for you to exist, you need to move forward and feel like you are in a spot that you can be happy with. You need to do that sometimes as well. And so being a generalist is good, but also very much can hurt you and harm you if you don't build a bit of a structure and framework. And so more recently, just to kind of provide a bit more examples, it's acknowledging, like, if I keep on this particular path, like, where will it eventually go? Who will it almost empower, and who will it disempower as well, and making more decisions around that. So trying to, almost make yourself redundant as a co-founder or a CTO is very important. So building up those around you to take on that, so you can free yourself up to do very reactionary generalist things still is so important. So almost finding someone to take parts of your CTO role away, and doing the things that you potentially don't love is so important. But also, empowering and supporting the team to grow, I think is so important. I think today or moving forward, my role is to just be available and to help answer and to help plan for the future of the company, and to always to unlock certain doors, but not to do it in a way that potentially blocks their growth in their career is something that I'm thinking about. But again, I won't necessarily nail it every day. There'll be a selfish decision every now and then to jump in and do it myself, or do some coding or make decisions. But I think that's important to have a bit of a balance.
I would say the fact that it's even in your mind and is important to you is hugely refreshing compared to a lot of co-founders. They usually realise that when it's maybe too late, when they've maybe been too controlling of everything and trying to do everything, but not knowing that they were doing it. The fact that you even are aware of it and you know that it could potentially be a problem, I can see would be really refreshing for the team as well, because you get out of their way. Is there any questions that you ask yourself, or is there anything that you can in the moment to go, like, I try one which is like, is this revenue generating? Or is this a $10 task or a $10,000 task? And sometimes that still doesn't help, but it kind of pulls you out of it. If you're like in a Figma design file or something, or changing a color or something, you're like, is this a is this a $10,000 task? Is it going to move the needle? Is there anything like you do from that perspective?
Yeah, 100%. I think that's something that I do that, but more for people. I think it's like, am I going to empower this person to take over that role one day, or take over parts of my responsibility? I think the one thing I've recalled back from hiring at a startup, and I don't think we've necessarily got this wrong, but the most important type of hire at a startup is people that can take away your role without too much direction. I think someone that understands and can be on the same page, but not someone that you have to constantly drip feed. And so by doing those decisions for them, I notice that I'm taking away the opportunity for them to make answers on their own and grow and whatnot. And so it's almost, by me jumping into this particular thing, will I block them from learning or growing or having those opportunities? Something that I think about. And that probably, would translate to a monetary figure eventually by freeing up my time. I could be working on those larger deals, or I could be working on some more poignant product strategy or company strategy pieces that will push the company forward further. And so, it's more about empowering in my role. I think, we're a team of 20 and we have a relatively flat structure. So there's a lot of upwards reporting, and there's a lot of those conversations and one-on-ones. And it's more about just trying to empower than trying to directly answer or directly do that. But I make that mistake all the time. And I think that's, you learn from these mistakes. You talked about it before of like, it's good that I talk about this stuff, and it's only from mistakes. So it's only from doing things and someone having that team below me to go, hey, Aaron, I think you crossed the line here. I think you should have let someone else make that decision. And that I'm so fortunate that I have a team that can upwards manage. Like that's probably one of the most important things moving forward as well, is having people that can challenge you and support you in a way that can sustainably grow yourself in the company as well. But I'd say it's about those decisions that, at the time, it's like, could someone else have made that decision just as good as you are, or just as, with the same context, or all that stuff. I think it's more important than necessarily putting a financial figure to that. But it's, something I do daily, I think,
So you're almost thinking about it, correct me if I'm wrong here, but what solves it now, but what solves it tomorrow and the day after? So as we scale, how does this improve things rather than just solve the problem in the moment, get rid of the pain, whatever it may be? So you're already thinking ahead, and I'm assuming that's what's allowed you to go from, I think when I looked at the research, it was you went from yourself and Matt to 20 people in 3 years. Yeah. Is that right?
Yeah, 3 years. And I would say that I'm not good at that too, as in like, it's again from learning. There's been heaps of times where I've just jumped in as a co-founder. It is your baby. It is something that you want to help grow and nurture. And I was again fortunate that I feel like this team it's also their baby as well. And so we're not feeling like it's just us pushing this direction. Everyone's on the same page, but 100% it's about how do you scale a company to not just answering this question today. It's about how you build a team or a process or an environment that can help scale, when we're not here. There's times when we're not going to be available. My co-founder, Matt, has just had a baby. I'm about to have a baby in a few weeks myself. And these things of, we're not going to be always here and all these things is so important that a company can live without its founders for a few weeks and have that autonomy moving forward. And it does hit into the points of imposter syndrome. It's like, well, if your company can exist without you, what are you doing? But that's okay. I think it's a really healthy environment to have where your value add, you're not required for the company to grow. And that is the biggest shift from, when it was just the two of us feeling like we were the only gears in the transmission or the cog of the machine to suddenly being less of an important thing. But again, just pushing in different areas or questioning things or providing context here and that. And yeah, like 20 to grow to 20 today is incredible. But yeah, it just feels like we can step back a bit and we can kind of go look and watch and fix little things and tweak it and grow it in different ways that we couldn't do before because we were inside that environment. So
I don't think I've ever heard a founder at the early stages say, I can be away for a few weeks.
Yeah. It probably isn't true. I think that it does bleed in. Like, I think, as a founder, like us being away for a few weeks just means that we're not in meetings every 9 to 5, but we're still checking Slack every day. We're still doing emails. We're still doing all these things. And I think that is personally okay. I think that is a freedom that that like, I don't see that necessarily being an issue. I'm not sapped by that as well. I think, where I can unblock certain decisions by quickly checking Slack and doing a 5-minute message is perfectly fine, but not necessarily having to be the part of that decision is kind of where we're pushing forward and striving forward as well. I think, it's hard as a founder, and I almost, don't think about it anymore. It's just like, unfortunately or fortunately, either way, it's just like your days are very blurred. There's no 9 to 5 at all ever. There is just this constant thing, and just trying to find your ways to deal with that, take your breaks, compartmentalize work and be off and be on, and all these different things is so much more important than necessarily calling it 2 weeks with no Slack as well. So, yeah.
I'm interested that I do see a lot of, I think Kris touched on it before as well, that there are a lot of, particularly CTOs, I'm sure it's probably prevalent in other roles as well, but in early stage startups, there are a lot of CTOs that struggle with the scaling phase. And I wonder, like, was there anything about you or any qualities that you have or practices that you do to try to make that effective as the business is scaling? You seem to talk about a fairly good balance where you're able to shift and move with the demands, whether you're thinking more of a high level and working more strategically, but then sometimes working closer to the metal, if you like with code or with teams. How do you think people can be successful in transitioning in that? Because I think a lot of people struggle with it.
Again, I think wouldn't necessarily have nailed it today. Now, potentially there's a future scale problem which I haven't hit just yet that really under wraps everything. But that's completely fine. I think I come from this mentality of like, it's okay. I think to consume yourself today by guessing what you need tomorrow is a really bad mentality in my opinion. I think try to design for somewhat scalability or somewhat future problems is definitely okay, but really questioning the requirements of, like, I want this product to one day be 1 million users concurrently, blah, blah, blah. I think that's something that's like, that will only hurt you unless you are in that spot today. And so feeling like you can make decisions that are incorrect for the future is so important. I think throwaway code or rebuilding things is a very healthy thing to do at a startup because you don't know the requirements of your users tomorrow or the next month or the next year. And so trying to guess that will only hurt you. And so we've been very pragmatic early days about being okay to discard code or being okay to redo things or being okay to make decisions that potentially are incorrect, because that indecision is so much worse for a startup than having scalability problems. And I won't go into the detail, but like we've maxed out our DB. We've done things where we've had to kind of scramble and add extra computing power because we've made decisions that didn't scale. But that's completely fine. I'd much rather have done that than be sitting at an application that can scale to millions and not having any customers as well. And so, I think as a startup founder, you need to prioritize what's important to you. And early days, it was keeping the lights on at a bare minimum, just enough to kind of to follow our users, but then grow as a company and team. Like we wanted to be around, we wanted to grow to the size we are today. And that is so much more important in my opinion. So it's hard because as a CTO who's especially worked at REA and Seek, I want to do everything that's so important to scale this out, but you really just have to pull yourself out and go, look, that's not important today. What is important is, delivering this feature or getting this new customer on board.
Are you hiring a certain type of team member to help you to elevate your role, or to take care of some of these? I think you mentioned before that you're helping people grow and take parts of the CTO role, I guess, like responsibilities for other team members. Do you have a certain particular philosophy, I guess, of the type of person that you're hiring that works with?
I think it's something that was scaled over the course of the company. At a early days startup, you can almost take whoever you can get. I think it's just you take your friends, your colleagues, or wherever, and you get them in, and you see what works and what doesn't work. And I think working with people that you've worked before, especially at a startup, really just helps things get going. You know what you're coming into and expecting. What we've found through that process is that we actually hired a certain cohort of people that, again, just have this high agency of just like, I think I understand what you're saying. I'm going to maybe tell you again, is this it? Okay, cool. And go and do this kind of concept of just taking away a problem, solving it, and I have an absolute trust in that individual that they're going to solve that. And I think that type of individual, as we grow as a company, is so important. It's not to the point of a lone wolf where they're doing things on their own. It's just this concept of like, I can see a problem. You might have mentioned a problem in a one-on-one or whatever. I'm going to take that down as feedback and I'm going to go and do that and execute on that. And that is fundamentally the best quality, in my opinion, as a startup. Obviously, there's a few different ones around that, making sure that they aren't just lone wolfing and going off. But that will be different from a company, say, at a 50 to 100, where you can't necessarily do that. You can't have people take part of a sentence and run and do that and execute that as well. And I think, how we hire today is going to be very different to how we hire for the future. But yeah, to your point about who specifically we're hiring, it's like people that are interested in problem solving and just curious. So infrastructure or backend isn't my jam as a CTO, and I don't have a lot of that experience. And so we've been so fortunate to hire people that are very curious in this nature and love to muck around with that. But they are also generalists. They can do front end to back end to app development, but maybe have a specialty in back end or specialty in front end and kind of execute on that as well. And so, yeah, for us as a company, like for now, it's hiring for high agency, high trust, and just getting stuff done in a way that can scale today. And then eventually we'll probably need to unpack some of that and move that and change that for tomorrow, I think.
Just to go back to something you said obviously it's important not to think too far ahead, right? And a lot of companies are like, we want to get to X, Y, and Z. Where does that not become a problem, but in your head, or what is the vision then in terms of where do you want BuildPass to get to, or what level or what growth, where is that versus solving the problems today?
Again, something that I think a startup would constantly probably struggle with as well is trying to work out how far forward do you think versus what's important today as well. And I'm happy to say that, I'm forward to say that BuildPass is not amazing at planning, and that's completely fine. I think having these future plans are only so important because we need to be reactionary to certain things in the environment. So BuildPass has this global ambition that we want to go overseas. We want to, we have this mission and vision that we've set up, and that's kind of our North Star, our steering direction of where we want to be going and how we decide and prioritize and build. But when it comes to some of the individual decisions, that's okay that we do a bit more focus. And I think as a startup, you need to flip that mindset. And we're potentially on we should have done it a while ago kind of boat where, we've potentially burnt that bridge a tiny bit too much, where we've been very reactionary versus kind of building some of the planning and the process out today. So I think it's important to know where you want to go, to have to kind of have your clear aspirations. How big do you want this company to be? Where do you want it to go? What do you see it doing? And I think that kind of that vision is so important to share with the rest of the team and have that common understanding. But then also being super flexible to be reactionary and be able to change that, to question that, to be static in that environment, especially as a startup, is probably, in my opinion, quite bad. And I think that if tomorrow we had evidence or information that global wasn't the answer, like being okay with that and to switch those decisions is so important. Again, you just can't be static. Like market changes. With construction, for instance, we had labor shortages and material shortages, and it just changed the appetite for customers to spend on software. So we had to kind of not pivot, but just think about it differently, and being okay with that, being okay to change is probably a very important factor, not only in startups, but in probably any job, but specifically, I guess, startups as well.
One thing I want to ask, I've got a lot of friends in this industry, right? In construction tech, in safety, they've been in it for a number of years. And something that always struck me was resistance to change, was like really trying to get folks to change in that industry was hard, man. Building product or trying to digitize stuff is hard in that industry. How have you tackled that?
So it's a hard industry. I think construction is, as I mentioned before, very individualism. There's their own ways to do their own things, and unfortunately, there's not a lot of standardization across the industry. I think the industry in general has been often left behind from either digital revolutions or products revolutions that we could be pushing into this industry. So again, it comes back down to not just assuming how they want to work or what they want to do. It has been quite flexible. Something that we've built into our product and working with our customers is how can we be the most flexible in nature of supporting their systems or their own processes today, and digitize that versus trying to then have to teach them a whole new set of processes or push them in a direction they don't want to do. That's then caused a whole bunch of technical headaches. You can imagine having a technical system that can be flexible to their requirements means that we have to do the heavy lifting instead of them. Whether that's the right decision is probably another answer. We probably do need to kind of conform this industry slightly when it comes to safety, when it comes to construction, because there are people that do it better than others, and there are actual compliance needs to be met as well. And so it's a bit of questioning them, a bit of education and encouragement of them to move in certain directions. But it is very much about how we can be flexible, how we can use our brains as software engineers or product engineers to build something that works for them, to scale that out. We've been very fortunate that I think there is actually a shift in construction. There's this, the kids of the previous parents are taking over the companies. This digital boom revolution's coming through, and they're like, I need to get on board because I'm being left behind as well. And so there's a bit of that coming today, which I think helps our cause. But again, it's just being super flexible and just listening and understanding them. I think it's the actual nature of how we think about that. And questioning, pushing forward construction is going to be so important, especially as the economy grows. Like how we be more efficient or how we can actually help building is going to be quite important.
So do you have in your mind then, in terms of you're not trying to be everything to everyone, so is it how do you build better integrations, APIs to work with the current software to help solve that problem? So ultimately, holistically, how do you make their life easier, and how do you solve a part of that problem through your product?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I think this is one of the hardest things a startup can often do is where do you have your boundaries set in place between yourself and other products as well. So very early on in our experiences, we got this impression that there's so many different softwares to do this vertical part of the job. There's one app to do this, one app to do that. And often some of that frustrations of construction with technology was the fact that there were so many different apps. And so that is a problem in itself. Like you can solve for that problem. And so we set out to be an all-in-one solution for part of the industry. So the way we talk about it is like on-site construction. We don't touch pre-construction. We don't touch, finance, all of that stuff. And so that is part of those boundaries. It's like almost drawing where you are as a startup. And we actually drew that up from our very early days at, eventually raising some money and doing a pitch deck. And we had that, we've actually stuck to those boundaries quite well, in my opinion. So you can't be, as you said, you can't be, I think, everything for everyone. That's so hard to do. And I think, that hammer that we talked about before, where we go ahead and build product, that can only last you so long before the technical debt really starts to kill you. And perhaps we've gone too far on that today, but you need to have some of those boundaries and be quite open. I think something that we discuss is BuildPass should be very open with its data and also accepting other data. So pushing through integrations where possible, making that streamlined, being very transparent. We know that we're not going to be for everyone. We know that people are going to use our competitors potentially at the same time as us, or use us to do part of the the process and use another person to do the other half of it, and just be very flexible. Like, I think to try to hoard customers or try to hoard their data is so backwards nowadays. It's like really just trying to be friendly and open with that. And so, yeah, we've drawn some boundaries. We've then often talked about how we then provide API or integrations within things that are outside of that. And we've been quite clear to our customers, like, we do this. We try to do as much as we possibly can to help save you having 10 different apps, but we only do this part of that. And that's kind of our mentality, because, yeah, to do everything would be way too much, and you would, have half-baked solutions, and you wouldn't get anywhere as well. You wouldn't have happy customers.
Where do you think that, because there are a lot of, say, product people that is like, I want everything, or business people. How did you come to the decision that was the right approach, rather than we need to solve for all these different things?
I think it just comes back down to there's only so much you can do, and it's part of that picking that niche as well. Like, by no means have we picked a very small niche. We've actually still picked a relatively large kind of all-in-one on-site operations tool. There's definitely, we could have just focused in on one aspect of that. I think you need to explain that to yourselves constantly and your customers why you've done that, and that is to be better at this particular area versus doing mediocre across the entire lot. And I think once the customer understands that, and we've been very forward with the customers. If they go, "Do you have this?" and we go, "No, we don't," and this is why we don't have that, and they can either jump on board and be okay with that, or they can not use us as a service. And I think that's being okay. I think early day startups, you try to get as many customers as you want. You say yes to everything. And that will often help you get to where you are today. But you really need to very quickly switch to the other direction, where it's like you need to explain to the customer or to the prospect that, look, this is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. And if you're not on board, that's completely fine. Maybe talk to us in a few months' time and kind of go from there, because that customer, by nature, if you say yes to that, they kind of constantly want more and more and more. And you're never going to be necessarily the best solution in their mind. And so, yeah, I think it's about explaining, and we've been very good at like trying to show the window of where we work and explaining that we want to do this and we want to do it well before we think about anything else. And they're like, well, I'm on board for that journey. I see what you're doing, and I really want to help kind of grow that through my feedback or through using your product, and just kind of getting to the point where maybe one day you'll have that bit of feature, and that's completely fine. I think that's something that I will look forward to the future.
The fact that you're so open about this too, like, is quite refreshing. And again, an industry, I know it's changing, but it's historically known to be fairly sharky at times, like secretive. They keep all their data, they keep a lot of the information to themselves. So again, was that something important to reflect your value set in the company? Is a lot of the stuff is open, the data is kind of free to integrate with others. Was that right from the very start? You're like, this is what we want to build regardless of the size?
100%. I think we looked at the construction industry as having some really backwards or anti-patterns when it comes to traditional SaaS or software as a service products, pricing being one of them, data being another one. For an example, pricing in this industry is based on normally based on the kind of company's revenue, so based on how much that company makes. And so you're almost penalizing them for efficiency of growth versus what they actually use of that software. And so we were very forward day one, where our pricing is on our website. Our pricing is SaaS-based, kind of more tier-based pricing for that exact being the exact decision of being very open and transparent and honest. Same with our data. It's like, yes, we don't have this feature today, but we will do what we can to export it out in various formats, or import in various formats, so that you can take it and leave it and move it wherever you need to. Because of that, there's almost like this part of the industry was very hoarding and very hard to break down those barriers. We wanted to be a bit of a breath of fresh air when it comes to thinking about software and construction, and challenge some of those norms as well. And I think that would be the case with any industry. I think we kind of see the writing on the wall. I think if you don't do some of the stuff, you're going to be potentially left behind when someone else comes and does a particular bit of feature better than you. And if you're not able to adapt, and by adapt, I mean open your walls and let that to exist, I think that's going to be something that would eventually kill yourself, or at least kill part of that product off as well. So yeah, it was very much an active decision by Matt and myself to be very open, or to be very different in our approach. And by different, I mean potentially just doing SaaS in a construction space, but doing it in a way that is different and contrasting to some existing software out there.
Were there, how did, I don't know if you guys covered it earlier when I dropped out, but how did you start in the very beginning in terms of like founder relationship and that kind of thing? Did you know each other beforehand? You worked together and that kind of thing? What was the...
Yeah, so the funny story is I used to be my co-founder's boss's boss. At REA Group, I was part of the corporate incubator space, Lee, and I managed someone that managed Matt. So Matt was a grad at the time coming in. The energy of Matt was just incredible. I think he had, you could see that he was a software developer, but you also could see that he was so much more than that as well. He's a salesperson, he's a marketer, he's a networker. And that's kind of my introduction to Matt. And just before COVID, actually, it was quite interesting. I left to go to Seek. And I literally had 4 days in the office at Seek and went into rapid lockdown in Melbourne, which is quite interesting. A part of that, Matt had this amazing idea to help out local businesses to start pivoting in COVID time. So pivoting from maybe this cafe was now doing online orders to help out instead of doing in-person orders due to the lockdown. And he wanted to build a website and application for that. And so I was like, I can help you that free, obviously, not for profit outside of my hours. And we built this entire thing. Matt managed to organize this entire team of about 15 people to kind of build this application out, from marketing through to building websites, all of these different things to get done. And I really enjoyed the technical aspect, and I jumped on and built this website, and Matt was organizing this entire thing, almost taking the preemptive CTO role and CEO role for the most part. And eventually, Melbourne's lockdown finished up, and we wrapped up the project. And I was saying to Matt, like, what we just did then was really awesome. Like, I really enjoyed that. And I've always wanted to do my own startup in a company. And he's like, hold on for a few months. I've got some ideas that are percolating. And about 3 months later, he came and he pitched BuildPass to myself, and he pitched it. And I think it was just the right time of feeling like I needed to do something different. Again, we were kind of in partial lockdown at the time. I was loving my role at Seek, but I really just wanted to kind of to spread and to grow and to try something different. And those experiences of that COVID little not-for-profit really just rang true in my ears. And so we decided to build this on out of hours. We built it, as I was saying to Kris at the start, was that almost out of hours, and it was seen as a bit of a holiday. It was almost like I enjoyed, I had my traditional job. I was managing an entire team in Seek, across Seek Asia as well. And then after hours, I was just coding and loving life and doing that, to the point where I was even able to take a day off Seek. I actually approached Seek and I said, even though I'm a manager of managers at Seek, can I take a 4-day, or can I have a 4-day week? And they were so supportive. I think that really helped me. Obviously, they were not wanting to lose me, but they were very supportive and going, look, we know why you're doing this. Let's just go. And that 5th day, again, was like a holiday, working 16-hour days just to kind of get that coding done and to get that application out. Is kind of where we got BuildPass up and running. But yeah, very much a funny interaction or funny connection with Matt, being his manager's manager at REA Group, through to building a little not-for-profit, through to building the first part of BuildPass as well. So
we were talking about it at the start, Dan. It kind of flies in the face of all advice you get for going into a startup, which is like, go into an industry you know inside out, you're experts in, stay in your lane, do what you know. You guys just decide to go into construction tech. I love it. It's awesome. And another, I guess, a good thing to come out of COVID, right? There wasn't many, but I think it changed a lot of how people look at how they work and what they wanted to do. 100%. So the thing I wanted to touch on is the last conversation we had, we were talking about AI. And I really liked your answer and approach. Sort of, I would say it was cautiously optimistic. And I can see over the last few months that you guys have really kind of started to release some really interesting stuff in that space. So first question would be, how is AI changing the product for the customers?
I think AI is just like, we're at this an absolute fulcrum of kind of innovation and technology that is shifting so quickly. From probably also want to touch on like AI within the company as well, but also the way we talk about products. So as a company, we've adopted AI significantly through to, even being very open during kind of interview processes, like saying, like, I want you to use AI if you feel comfortable. Don't feel like you have to not use it, because, when it comes to writing code day to day, like, that's what you're going to be using. You're going to be using Copilot or whatever to build this stuff out. And so from our sales team and marketing team, doing their jobs more efficiently, it's about how can, we find these little efficiencies in our own life and our own world to build out these use cases. And that's then quickly moved into construction. So we did this almost percolation of AI within the company before we made any major moves to our customers. We didn't want to just tack on AI for sake of tacking on AI. I think that buzzword, or it's so hot right now. I think it's so important to question that. Like, I think we can see the immediate value for us internally, but then like we were almost thinking about it, like how do we then approach that to our customers? I think construction, might be quite wary of what AI can do, taking away parts of the jobs or parts of these things and not seeing it necessarily in the greatest light. And so having to do this in a way that we can approach this and that it's being a positive experience. We've also got this amazing opportunity that people using our platform and using AI, it might be the very first time they've used it. We're not talking about professionals that are doing, in the office doing, they may have used ChatGPT before. We're talking about site managers on site that maybe this is their first experience. And so we have a lot of pressure, but also a lot of amazing opportunities to expand that and to do it in a positive light. So we approach the concept of AI for our customers in a way that how can we just shift 10% of immediate kind of small values, so kind of small trickles of wins throughout their entire process of feedback, so their entire process of developing on site. So little things like taking a photo of a construction site, and we can automatically tag that photo up with what's in that photo, or doing things like summarizing a diary or a text bit of information to go to a report. Just these little things that we can just do, the incremental kind of that value, just to kind of introduce it to them, to get that kind of the ball rolling, and just to see, like, are we about to make a really bad or one-way door decision right now by doing this? Are we going to piss off a bunch of our customers? And it was so positively the exact opposite. People were like, this is amazing, this is lovely, you've just saved me time, I'm loving it. We had almost these customer conversations. It was like, I don't really know what AI is doing or how this is working, but I'm loving it. I'm here for it. There's a really positive kind of approach to it. And so we're like, okay, well, how do we turn this tap on even harder as well? And trying to find different parts of the platform that we can then go harder, being more efficient, and just taking a more of a holistic approach. So before it was a bit of a scattergun. Now we're taking a step back and going, okay, well, let's actually question some of those beliefs that we had before about how you run construction. So can we do things entirely different? Can we just use voice or video to do a bunch of the stuff that we're now capturing and doing as part of the platform with BuildPass today? Can we use that to just take entire functions away? And by functions, I mean more about the processes that they have to do. So if they have to capture defects on a construction site and tag them up and send them off to a particular subcontractor, can we do that all for them as well? And just start to question those things that historically we never thought we could before, because AI didn't really kind of exist, or rather didn't push those boundaries. And so, we're very much, taking that, as you said, cautiously optimistic kind of approach to trying it out. And now we're on that kind of the train of, like, we've had some amazing experiences with customers seeing the value here. Let's see where we can go and see how we can push this further.
Because of everything we spoke about before and what BuildPass is all about, you could almost argue the other way and say that introducing too much AI could almost kill the product, or could kill the vibe of what you're trying to go for, because you are very personalized, you are looking after the customer. If you start losing that and they feel like it's AI, then you kind of lose a bit of your identity.
Yeah.
How are you balancing those two things?
100%. I think losing the identity is so important. Like, we've been that customer centric, platform for so long, and as a company, we never want to get rid of that. So the way we look at it is, like, not necessarily interject AI or block current processes with AI. It's like, how we be more efficient with that stuff. So the old examples of using almost chatbots for support with AI just to get those answers and being extremely frustrated and not getting your answer, I think that we're very cautious of those things. And so we're very much, I think the mentality of, like, human in the middle is so important. So if an AI is helping, it's not necessarily replacing the human, it's just enabling that person to do more and to do better. We also think about it differently. Like, it's doesn't just have to be AI. It's this concept of these experiences that wow, and we want to provide those to our customers. And maybe that's AI sometimes, or maybe that's not. Maybe that's just really, really nice UX or really nice UI to get that stuff done is so important. And so just being careful to hit this AI and hammer and go through and hit everything is so important. But again, coming back down to the values that we trust and love with our customers is, like, what can we do, or how can we scale to be more efficient? And sometimes we won't even label it as AI. Maybe it's just happening behind the scenes, or maybe it's just happening, maybe we're processing data for them and just providing some really nice examples of that. And it doesn't, you don't have to label these things. You don't have to kind of shove it in their face and go, this is AI doing it for you. It can just be a really awesome product and a really awesome experience from dealing with our customer success team through to dealing with the product and features as well. And so we can very much challenge the idea that if you implement AI, you're just talking to a machine. Like, you can still feel very humanized, very customer centric, in my opinion.
It's kind of gone full circle, right? Because the problem before was convincing people to use this stuff would actually be helpful or beneficial and it would be safe. And now it's almost like some people asking to use it or trying to understand how you're using it more, because there's a mass adoption of it. So there's a lot more acceptance. But I think what you've said, and Dan and I have spoke about this, and we did a really cool video on human versus AI to see about reading resumes and bios and things like that. And what I took from it at the end is, if it's a co-pilot, if it's helped, if it's assisted, and it's factual, I don't see much of a problem with it, because it allows you to then do other things, right? It's when it's not, it's when it's just used, like it goes from ChatGPT or Claude straight to customer or straight to LinkedIn or straight to whatever. You can just tell that, right? It's just, it stands out so much. Is the inauthenticity of it, I think, is probably the main thing.
Yeah, Matt. And I think that's something that we're very conscious of as well. Like, you can just put through, things, as you said, through ChatGPT or Claude and get that answer as well. And I think, we have some things going direct to customers when they want to summarize some text as well. But we can, we have reporting on what comes in, what comes out, just to kind of tune that stuff out. And I think in some cases where we can't manage that outcome, we might label it as AI and go, look, just letting you know, this might be a bit rough and a bit rocky as well, but here's this experience. But then when we trust, or when we can kind of provide that experience around that, like, it doesn't have to be, I think, you're 100% right. It's almost like, the full circle nature of that as well. A bit of a mentality that we've always talked about internally, especially with construction, is like, if a customer comes to us and asks for an AI feature specifically for something, we've kind of been a bit too slow. Like, as in, like, it's quite an interesting thing about construction is, like, they're not necessarily the ones always pushing for the stuff. And it's very much we have a role to play here about setting some of those things forward and almost educating them and trying these things out. Like, you think about how OpenAI build out the open experience for ChatGPT. Like, we can do something here for construction. And I'm sure no one's lecturing OpenAI on how to build AI or what features to build. Like, they're very much kind of that pushing that forward. And with construction, we have a similar opportunity to play here as well. Like, we can push this industry forward, and we can do things in a way that we can test things out. Maybe that one doesn't work, pull it out, try this as well, and just give it a go. I think it's really important. And again, our customers are loving it, and quite optimistic about kind of what it can do to help them out as well.
Has there been any challenges with how AI impacts with the user experience? How do you balance the two so that, like, people are, I always, some of the AI things, like if you look at typically, I can chat with a large language model, but in terms of like a product and actually using it to get a job done, sometimes I think people go, let's just slap AI on it, and it's like a bit clunky in terms of its experience because they're different worlds. Have you had that kind of challenge, and how have you worked out how to balance the two or navigate?
Yeah, I think the way that we looked at it is, like, we probably haven't just yet. We've currently just did a hack day last week actually on this as well, but we haven't allowed the user to directly talk to massive LLMs or any kind of chat interface just yet, because it is so varied, or it's so hard to nail, and it can be a bit clunky. Like, we do have some concepts of assistant-based, conversation that's very poignant to a particular bit of product. So an example of this is in construction, checklists rule the world. A checklist to do a safety walk or a checklist to do an incident are the things that need to get done. So we quickly we're like, hey, can we build an AI to build these checklists? Because you often don't. You might need one quickly on the spot to do a safety walk. Can we do that? And so we've built our AI about doing certain tasks and doing those as best as we possibly can. Really just tuning to just do one thing well and not being too broad. And so some of that user experience, it's positively impacted because they're not worried about this all these actions that can spin up from a different AI. It's just about, hey, can you build me this checklist to do this? Cool. And that interface as well is kind of finally optimized. We are exploring the larger kind of conversational models where we can talk to a knowledge base or a this and that, but those become so much harder and so quickly can deteriorate your brand or your their experience. And so we're very cautious about those ones and doing them in a way that we could be in the middle. So we've just recently built a bot to take in all of our knowledge base and understand our product as well. But maybe that's just used by our internal support team first to help answer questions as part of support versus directly to that customer. So we can always put that lens on. So being very cautious about deteriorating UX is something that we're very, we're thinking about a lot and only making steps where we know that this particular task, it's actually going to do pretty good at, and we're not going to hurt their customers' use of the platform.
More sort of broadly, Aaron, what advancements do you see either now or in the future that are going to make a kind of fundamental impact to construction with AI?
Yeah, with AI, there's just this huge thing around vision and audio. I think the construction industry it works on images or video or things about capturing defects or capturing timelines and progresses and then converting audio from meetings and on-site meetings to transcripts. So I think about the way that we think about construction is that the technology that's going to be supporting that doesn't quite exist just yet. So some models today can do maybe a frame every 2 seconds of video, decoding a video frame and describing what's in that, or the audio can be semi-live, transcribing on the device. And so the future enhancements are around those things that can happen tomorrow. So the way we design our AI almost today is like if we have a really aspirational AI feature that can't currently work because the models are insufficient or whatever, we don't worry about that. We almost just like plan for that to eventually be the case. We plan for live transcribing of video and audio because eventually one day that's going to happen. It's just the rapid advancements of AI when it comes to the size of the models and the size of the context and the speed in which they're running is just incredible. Like it's just going so quickly. So from this time last year, like the models have just like almost doubled in power and doubled in speed. And so we think about that and we think about, okay, well, in 3 months' time, we want to have this particular feature. We can't do it today. That's okay. Let's just build the wrapping and build the rest of it around for now. And eventually we can swap out the models and we can swap these things out as well. But to come back to construction, I think audio and video is going to be the biggest thing for construction moving forward because they are such a visual industry. Everything is, inspections through to incidents, through to everything is just all videos and photos, and we can help support a lot of that through AI in the future, I think. So, yeah.
What do you say to people then? Because you've given a good case for efficiency, doing your job better. What do you say to people who are sitting there, might be experts in their space or subject matter expert, they've done the job for a long time? What do you say to them that fear relinquishing some of that and they have a lot of negativity towards AI because they ultimately think it might replace them or it might do their job?
I think developers went through this about a year and a half ago with like Copilot and all this stuff. The concept of like this thing could take away my job. Am I scared by that? And even back then when we discussed some of this stuff about autocomplete or things like that, I think that's an initial reaction to be quite scared of it because it could replace it. But we've gone through this just journey of like, you know what, it just takes away the dull part of your job. It takes away part of the things that you don't necessarily need to do. So we've had this conversation a few times with industry experts or leaders, to example of who are the ones creating that Take 5 checklist or safety checklist. Like those are industry experts that have put in the time, the craft, and they know how to do this. And so if we're taking away aspects of that, like you need to do it in frame that mindset of like, what can I now do as a result of not having to do the mundane tasks as well? Like, how can it be more poignant? And so for those that like in the concept of a safety expert, they can now be more present on site. They don't have to do the administration tasks as well. And so we've been quite fortunate that we've not necessarily had to come up against the stuff. We've actually had some really positive conversations of people that maybe would have part of their entire role or entire company moved away, but they're taking it very positive in that it's like, I'm on board. I want to see what it can do for me as well and kind of take that on. But for those that don't or haven't, maybe you think about it differently as well. I think, again, it comes back down to be cautiously optimistic, like trying to be curious about certain things. It comes back down to not fearing the things that potentially you don't understand and just being a bit more curious with that stuff because it might take some things away, but that's also a positive thing. I think, we don't have to, write code the way we used to because it can help that stuff out. But that's not to say that you don't need to know coding anymore. Your role is now how you might orchestrate some of these bots. And I don't think there's ever going to be a world where, someone doesn't know coding. I think I think someone will always be there, and I'm happily be proven wrong one day if that's not the case. But that's okay. Like, I think, our job is now to orchestrate versus to be the doers, and that's completely fine. So it's just good about industry to industry. It's about what can I not do and what can I now do as part of AI.
It's incredibly exciting, I think, because the automation and the ability to be able to have an assistant to do some of this stuff we've never had that level of capability. So all of a sudden, startups have an opportunity to scale their company, and they might not need to raise a bunch of capital and hire 50 people, because they might be able to do a lot of this through automation and really clever hiring and being able to sort of build it in a really smart way, that a lot of this admin stuff and labor intensive stuff is done with the AI. And then we're able to then do more of the creative stuff, or the stuff that fills your cup, I suppose. It was similar to when we spoke to Alana at LinkedIn, Dan, and she was saying that they did a big survey on a few of the revolutions around, like, some inventions around the telephone and other things, the computer. And it was like doom and gloom prediction. This is going to take over our jobs. We're not going to be able to do anything. Ultimately, it just turbocharged us because we adapted and found a way to thrive in that environment. And I also think COVID's a perfect example. We got locked down and couldn't do anything, and businesses were shutting down. And look how quickly they adapted. Look how quickly they actually grew. And there was a lot of companies and success stories within that period of time. So I think we're pretty resilient.
Yes. I think, like this sort of rise right now, the solo entrepreneurs that are able to run almost like what seems to be entire companies, and they're just doing it themselves because they can use tools that automate a lot of that process today as well. And so, like, we can be more efficient as a company, or as a I guess whole entire country, to do things that we historically couldn't have done as well. I think it does come back to a quote. I can't remember the exact quote, but it's interesting. It's like, I want to do my art. I want AI to do the things so that I can do my art. But right now, AI is doing the art, and I'm having to do the things that I can't. And so I would love for the concept of automation and AI to take away properly those mundane tasks, to free us up to do the things that we love, versus taking away some of the things that we love so that we can do other things that, as part of a company, I like coding, and if AI take away coding, that's kind of like, okay, well, what's my worth? What's my thing? So I think there's a healthy mix, bit of a balance, but 100%, like, our productivity is just skyrocketing, and that's good to some degree. But then what are we doing to replace that positively? Like, do we now afford some of that downtime to do some things that mentally would help us out to sustain longer startups, or sustain longer growth as well, which I think is quite important to think about. Not just add more, but to mix this up a bit.
Maybe we progress to working on going to space.
Yeah.
That's like, AI can handle Earth. We go, that's out.
If Elon's listening, I think he's been thinking about this for a while.
He's going to have a lot of demand.
I don't think Elon tunes into this, but it would be nice if he did. Finally, I'd like to ask Aaron, so anyone who's listening at the moment and is maybe struggling with issues in their site, they're trying to solve problems, etc., what would you say to them specifically about why they would want to come and talk to BuildPass?
Yeah, I think, and more broadly of just what BuildPass does. We are a digital on-site solution, but we're not just here about trying to digitize those bit of paper that you might have sitting in your side office. Like, we genuinely are trying to change the way that the industry operates, the positive. So questioning certain things. I think some of our mentality is like, every person, every worker should be able to go home safe to their family and their kids, and all of these concepts of, like, both from a timely point of view. I mean, that quite literally, like, you shouldn't be bogged down doing paperwork and you're doing overnight, late hours. You should be able to go home and enjoy that, through to helping identify safety risks on site and encouraging, safe conversations about what's going on. So I think more broadly, why I would say talk to BuildPass is that we're on a journey more broader than digitizing. We are on a journey to just question some of these things and to challenge some of the norms and to build some pretty cool software and pretty cool experiences. And also, we're very open. I think, as we discussed, I think we we want to work with you. We want to co-create the future of construction with our customers and our users today. And we're very keen to do that as part of a journey, not just us telling you what you should be doing as well. So I think that's kind of what I would say to them. Yeah.
And every time I check my LinkedIn, you've got another 100 customers.
Yeah.
I think so. You're at like 300 odd customers now. What's the next sort of big exciting milestone, or what are you working towards at the moment?
Yeah, I think so. We're 300 customers, which is an amazing milestone. I think again, thinking about that 3 years ago, I'm not sure if I would have ever thought about that. I do remember the day that Matt asked, like, hey, are you keen to go full time on this? And I just bought a house and I was like, I don't think I can afford this right now. And to think where we are today is just incredible. Our big milestones is like, we really want to be, providing a scalable solution. I think as part of what we talked about previously before is that BuildPass had to say yes to a lot of our customers to understand the needs as well. But that white gloved approach of onboarding customers, understanding them, can only go so far. So our next chapter is how we build that authenticity, but at scale. So how do we onboard customers in a way that they can still, they can do it themselves, but also they can still reach out and have a conversation, so we can hit 600 to 1,000 customers quite even quicker as well. And then more broadly is overseas. So we think we can do a lot with safety and construction management overseas. Australia is pushing the way in certain aspects in many ways, but also there's probably things that we don't have in Australia as well. So trying to diversify our product to go overseas and to try new markets is something that's quite important for us moving forward as well. And we'd love to hit our first overseas customer by end of this year, early next year as well. I think it's going to be a huge milestone for us to try things out, and not just to have that Australian market under their wraps, but also just be a bit of more of a global company of thought as well.
That's super exciting. And knowing you guys, you'll probably have 100 customers there within the first year too. Absolutely. Anything else you'd like to cover, Dan?
No, nothing from me. I think that's pretty awesome. We covered some really great topics. I think it's really fascinating to hear. I do have family that work in construction, but for me, I'm a bit of a rookie. I know nothing, but it's been kind of fascinating, especially how AI, I do wonder sometimes, because there's conversations in my industry as well, which is not hugely technical or innovative in tech. It's something that's on my mind a lot about how things like AI and these kind of innovations affect those kinds of industries. So really good to hear about how you guys have been able to weave it into the UX and make it kind of delightful for users. I think that's pretty cool. It's great.
Yeah, agreed. Well, thank you very much, Aaron. Thanks for joining us.
No worries. Thank you, Mr. Dan.
Thanks, Aaron.
Right.